All right. Welcome back, my friends, to All Cars Reacts. And today it is time for, yes, another reaction video. This week I'm doing one, admittedly, all for me. The 2009 Nissan Cube. Now, if you have been a fan of the channel, you know I love my dorky, small Japanese hatchbacks. And this was one of my favorites. And I think it's widely hated, which only makes me like it more. So, as always, you and I are just chatting here today as old friends. Make yourself comfortable in your comfy chair. Grab yourself your beverage of choice. We have some very old coffee right now, and let's jump into it. I know this is older, but not that old. I mean, this was only 15 years ago, but I've got stories around it. And I also have to say this was not on the Motorweek YouTube channel, so we do have to give a big shout out and thank you to our friends over at Hondata97 for having this one uploaded. I'll provide a link to the base video here for you to check out if you like.
For over 10 years now, the Nissan Cube has thrived as one of Japan's favorite little city cruisers. And while small, boxy Asian imports like this Scion XB and the Honda Element, and most recently the Kia Soul, have scored well with U.S. buyers, the Cube has stubbornly stayed away, content with the Japanese market.
You know, and that makes me think, I did the, it would have been released by the time this one's released. I did the Scion, the first generation XA and XB. I need to do the second one, but that makes me think I've never done the Element, a reaction to an Element review. That would be a good one. And also, I've never done the Kia Soul. That might be for the best. But anyway, let's continue on.
But that is about to change. The Battle of the Boxes is being joined by the third generation 2009 Nissan Cube, so North American buyers finally get to see what all the hype is about. Debuted at last fall's LA Auto Show, the latest Cube is built on a shortened version of the Nissan Versa's proven B platform. Its 99.6-inch wheelbase adds little overhang for a concise 156.7 inches in overall length. That's shorter than similar boxy rivals. Style-wise, what you have here is hip meets geeky in a sort of whimsical and cartoony way. With cues often attributed to its targeted young adult buyers, the Cube's face seems devoid of any real emotion. Its wide blank headlamps and sterile grille exude ambiguity. The Cube's latest low-hunkered slacker stance is actually an evolution of past models, with more curves, asymmetrical side-to-side glass treatment, and even a tail, taking the edge off the Cube's ultra-tall cabin. The Cube finishes...
Okay, hold on. Wow. Expressionless face? Really? I think this is absolutely adorable. Now, I think they have actually a good point. There's a little horizontal slot underneath the grill there. I always thought it looked out of place. They had the option, they had the opportunity to really make this cartoonish, if you think about it. With the two headlights, you could have made those a little more eye-like, could have made more mouth underneath it, and they resisted it, honestly. They did something that's whimsical, was a good choice of words by them, without getting quite over the top. It is absolutely cute, and they might say this is intended for younger buyers, but I don't know. I was like 40 when I looked at one, maybe a little older than that, and I loved it. Now, as a point, I did have a Versa at the time, and so this was not much of a stretch, but it had so much more flexibility than the Versa did. I thought very, very seriously about buying one of these. Very seriously. This asymmetrical window back here at the back, the reason for that is when you look over your shoulder, you can see traffic, right? What do I want to say here? You know, we talk about how cars and the safety standards today have led to higher sills and lower roof lines, and it's more like driving in a bunker, and now we have to add all these extra safety precautions, safety detection devices, or just, hey, just put a big window in so you can see. I love it. Absolutely love it. I think it looks cool without quite being cartoonish, and I won't say it looks masculine at all, but I don't think it looks overly effeminate. My opinion, my eyes, yours might disagree rather strongly, but I absolutely love it. And I love the chunkiness of the around the windows. They're not going with flush mount. It actually just looks kind of chunky, and it makes it look a little, to me, again, a little more substantial than just cute boxy. Let's go on.
Is off its architecture with a swing-out rear door graced with a long ovalish window. There's a lot of geometry happening here. There are 4 Cube trim levels: base, S, SL, and Chrome. Chrome adds a number of eye-catching body treatments from front to rear. The Cube's wheels measure 15 or 16 inches in steel or aluminum. Within, the Cube surprised us with a much airier and spacious feel than the exterior would indicate. The box, after all, is a most space-efficient shape. Beyond roominess, the Cube's 5-passenger interior has a nice, soft, yet minimalist feel to it, but with a roundness that's different from the harder-edged interiors of its rivals. The upright dash houses gauges and controls that are somewhat simple in operation, but very modern in presentation. A perfect example being the circular climate control interface. Unfortunately, materials did feel a little on the bargain basement side. But one of the most artistically designed elements is the rippled roof ceiling, which gives the illusion of a stone having been tossed into a glassy pond. The Cube seats are nicely stuffed to offer a cushy feel, and like with other Ultra Box rivals, they offer excellent positioning and visibility. Available user-friendly technologies include such goodies as Bluetooth, a Rockford Fosgate upgraded stereo, whose speakers also mimic the rippled design effect of the roof, and a handy iPod interface. The well-done 60/40 split rear bench seat both slides and reclines. So while fit for 3 trim travelers, there's also more than enough room for a couple of relative giants. But open the tail door, which swings away from the curb for safe loading, you'll find only a stingy 11.4 cubic feet of cargo space with all seats in use. That's a good deal less than rivals. But fold the second seat and the Cube redeems itself with a solid 58.1 cubic feet of space. For power...
Okay. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. First off, I don't even know where to start. There are a ton of people out there who are driving SUVs right now, and this is what they really need. Something like this, right? The Scion, the Element, or this. It has tons of vertical space. Did you see how much space there was in that back seat? The hip point, the seat height was actually pretty high. It's an efficient use of space and still gives you that swing open tailgate, which I love. Load from the curb. Criticizing the cargo space behind the back seat when you point out earlier that it is shorter than its rivals, a little unfair in my mind. Slightly unfair. But if you're carrying 4 people and you're trying to go somewhere, well, it matters. You're stacking everything on top of each other. The thing that jumps out at me here, and this is, I always like to say in these videos, trip down memory lane, right? And this one really is, because they absolutely nailed it in my mind. On the one hand, what I'm trying to get out here is Japan does so much cool stuff, and I wish we appreciated it here more in America so we could see vehicles like this. Even the smaller class, I know they don't meet our safety standards, but this is cool, and it's thoughtfully designed. It's got a lot of touches, like that center light that looks like you dropped something in a pond, and then carrying that over to the speakers. They didn't just slap a speaker down there because this is a cheap car. They actually sweated the detail a little bit. You don't see that very often until you get up to higher price stuff. And that's kind of my opinion of the Japanese car industry at the lower end. To differentiate yourself among all these other tiny little, you've got to put those thoughtful little touches in. And this car is really cool. Now, I always thought the circular climate control gauges, first off, I thought they were too low, and it was kind of a gimmick. I mean, honestly, Mini does it too, things like that. But they did point out the materials were kind of cheap, because sitting behind the wheel, the gauges were clear, everything was super easy to use, but you could tell it was built down to a price point. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't horrific. It was certainly better than, let's say, what Ford was doing in the 90s. But it was a cut below, in many cases, some other small cars at the time. But it made up for it in personality to me. I cannot express to you how much I like this car. Not the perfect interior, but dang. It was cool. Even where they've got nice vertical vents, right? Not circular ones. And in front of the passenger, it was kind of scalloped out a little bit there. But did you notice to the left of the steering wheel where the vent was for the HVAC? There was a cup holder right there, about the size of a Coke can, probably. And that's cool. It's not down on the floor. It's not taking up a ton of space over here. They put it over here. And what's super cool about that is, if you're running the air conditioner, it would keep your drink cold too. Whether that was their intention or not, I'm not sure, but I used to do that in my 83 Buick. You could set it right there in front of the vents and keep your drink cold. And I just love this car.
Front drive Cube uses the Versa's 1.8-liter i4 with 122 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque. We found it provided plenty of spunk for everyday commuting. There's a choice of 2 transmissions, a 6-speed manual or CVT automatic. Fuel economy ratings are 24 city, 29 highway with a manual, and 28 city, 30 highway with the CVT automatic. We beat that with 34.1 on regular gas. Appropriately for any city car, we first drove the Cube in and around the vibrant streets of Miami. Its front strut rear torsion beam suspension yielded a comfortable ride and was adequately responsive, but no handling star. Still, the Cube does what it's supposed to do. It shines in tight, slower-moving city traffic due to 2 things: concise size and its small 33.4-foot turning diameter. With its light-touch, electrically assisted steering, the Cube is a U-turn champ. In faster traffic, the boxy shape takes its toll in wind noise and crosswind stability. Driving aids like stability and traction control, as well as ABS with brake assist for the disc drum layout, are standard. To put this Cube on your street.
All right. So I unfortunately, they're not going to do the track testing of it. So let's talk about this. Having had a Versa and having driven more than one of these, the engine was fine. The powertrain in the Versa and in the Cube never felt quite as gutsy as it should have. If you drive an older Japanese car with like 100 horsepower, they feel zippy. This powertrain never does. I think the platform was a Renault platform, but then the engine was Nissan, as I recall. I'm sure you'll correct me if I was wrong on that. So I always like to joke that this thing had 122 rampaging Japanese horsepower, which means they were very, very small horsepowers. It didn't ever feel zingy. It never felt super peppy. It always felt like it was dragging the car. It never felt quick. And even though it had more torque than horsepower, it never felt torquey either. I had the manual. I could brake the wheels free in first and in second gear if I really tried, but it never really felt zippy like, say, the Honda Fit did to me. And it got worse with the CVT. And even though it was a 6-speed manual, it never really excelled on the highway either. It never really, that 6th gear was not high enough to really keep the revs down where you got great gas mileage. And one of the big disadvantages of the Cube was because of its styling, it was worse. It was noisier, and to me anyway, it felt slower while being slightly more expensive, as I recall. So let's see what they say. other than that, the engine was fine. Not overwhelmingly refined, but it wasn't bad, and it lasted for 100,000 miles with me basically ignoring it.
Will require $14,710 to start, ranging to $20,090 for the top-notch chrome trim. Like the Scion XB and Kia Soul, a thick catalog of dealer-installed accessories will be available. The 2009 Nissan Cube is a cool little people mover that's been buzzing around Japan for over a decade. Now the Cube will join the ranks of small, boxy imports that are attempting to gain big favor here. To that, we say, it's squarely about time.
Completely agree, and they're all gone. Well, except for the Soul, I guess. The Soul is still here. And that's a shame. Again, like I said earlier, there's a lot of SUV owners who really should be driving something like this. And it's affordable transportation. It's cheap to insure, and it gets good gas mileage. This is everything America needs right here, the Nissan Cube. Thank you for this public service announcement, and thank you for listening. So I've sat here and I've raved about it, and sure, it's not the perfect car, but you're probably saying, well, John, if you loved it so much, why didn't you buy one? So it's not the looks. I am not so hung up on my masculinity that I would feel self-conscious driving this. I don't care. I think it's a cool ass car. Excuse my French. Oh my goodness. Hope I don't get demonetized for that one. But for me, it boiled down to two things. First off, the Versa was a better buy and had a tremendously large interior for its size. So the Versa was just a little less expensive. And the extra space, the extra utility of the Cube, was it really worth the price difference to me? And secondly, is if you were going to take any kind of highway drives, the Versa was a better option. Neither one of them drove super well. They were both noisy, and they weren't terribly ever settled. You know, they didn't ride like a Buick, all right, on the interstate. But the Cube, to me, was noticeably louder. And I'm talking about, keep in mind here, I drove into the dealership in a Versa and then drove this thing. So I had back-to-back drives. And for me personally, at that moment in my life, I already had the Versa. And it was relatively new. I think it was a couple years old, 3 years old at the time. 2 or 3 years into my 10 years of ownership of that thing. It didn't make any sense to trade this in and then come up with a wad of cash to buy something that's basically the same platform just because it's super cool. And so I didn't. But it begs the question of, if I was in the market at the time and it was between a Versa and the Cube, what would I do? Ooh, probably the Cube, but I'm cheap. And so if it came down to price, well, the Versa's the better deal. And if I ever had to go on the interstate, the Versa would be the better deal. And the fact of the matter is, if I had to do it all over again, I would have gotten a Honda Fit. So I love this car, guys. I really do. I think it is lampooned. I think it was a failure. And gosh, I miss it. And I would absolutely love to have one. I would still drive one proudly today. I love it that much. So thank you so much for being here for my personal trip down memory lane to a car that I cannot tell you how close I came to buying. Thanks for being here, y'all. Appreciate your time.